My father slammed his linen napkin onto his dinner plate so hard the silverware rattled. "Buy your own food and stop freeloading off my house," he sneered across the table. "You don't contribute a single dollar to this family." To my left, my stepmother, Diane, smirked into her Pinot Grigio. Across from her, my half-brother let out a low snicker. I didn't scream. I didn't defend myself. I just let the silence stretch out over the roast beef. I slowly put down my fork, wiped my mouth, and pushed my chair back. I grabbed my purse and walked out the front door into the October night without a word. My father figured he was teaching me a lesson in respect. He figured that was the end of it. He had no idea that 4 weeks from now, his 60th birthday gala and his entire professional reputation would be gone, and I would be the one holding the cancellation paperwork. 8 months earlier, the cracks were already showing if you knew where to look. Dad ran a boutique commercial real estate brokerage outside of Dallas. For years, he was the guy with the custom-tailored suits, the corner booth at the steakhouse, and the leased Mercedes in the driveway. But the market shifted, and the big contracts dried up. I only knew how bad it was because I lived in the finished basement of his 5-bedroom colonial. I moved in after my lease in the city ended, paying him $800 a month in rent to help cover utilities. I worked as an underwriter for a regional bank, which meant I knew exactly what past due notices looked like. They started appearing on the kitchen island around February. A red-stamped envelope from the country club. A final notice from the landscaping service that kept the front lawn manicured for the neighbors. One morning, I came upstairs to make coffee and found my dad standing in his bathrobe, staring at a declined credit card receipt from a dinner with investors the night before. He shoved it into his pocket the second he saw me. But Diane wasn't about to let reality ruin her lifestyle. She treated the house like a luxury resort and me like the unpaid staff. She kept her bi-weekly appointments at the upscale salon downtown and kept ordering cases of expensive wine, leaving the empty cardboard boxes for me to break down and drag to the curb. My half-brother, Kyle, was a 19-year-old community college dropout who slept until noon and spent his afternoons playing video games in the living room, surrounded by empty energy drink cans. The real problem wasn't just the money drying up. It was Dad's upcoming 60th birthday. In his circle, a 60th birthday wasn't just a party. It was a networking event. It was a way to prove you still had power, influence, and capital. He had spent the last 2 years bragging to his business partners, his wealthy clients, and our extended family that he was throwing the gala of the decade at the Oak Creek Country Club. The only issue was the country club wanted money, real money. One Tuesday night, I came home from work to find Dad sitting alone in the dark kitchen. A half-empty glass of scotch sat on the granite counter next to a contract from Oak Creek. "They want a deposit," he muttered, not looking up. $3,500 a month for the next 8 months, or they release the date. I put my laptop bag on the chair. "So pay it." He rubbed his temples. "I have cash tied up in escrow. A couple of deals are delayed. If I cancel this party, my investors are going to smell blood in the water. They'll pull out of the West Side development project. It'll ruin me." He finally looked at me. The pride was gone, replaced by desperation. "I need you to cover the venue deposits," he said. "Just until my deals close, you're living under my roof. It's the least you can do for this family." I should have said no. I should have walked back downstairs, packed a bag, and left. But he was my dad. I pulled out my checkbook and wrote the first $3,500 check right there on the granite counter. He took it without saying thank you. I didn't know it yet, but that check was just the beginning of a very expensive trap. For the next 7 months, on the first of every month, an automated AUK transfer of $3,500 cleared my checking account and landed in Oak Creek's corporate ledger. I didn't miss a single payment. I brown-bagged my lunches, skipped my own vacation, and put my savings on ice. I was funding a phantom empire. While I was keeping the ship from sinking, the rest of the crew was busy redecorating the deck. Diane didn't know about the bailout. As far as she was concerned, I was just the basement dweller extending my childhood. She made sure I felt it. One Saturday, I was doing laundry, trying to get a coffee stain out of my only good blazer for a bank presentation. Diane walked by, holding a brand new Prada shopping bag. She stopped, looked at the blazer, and sighed. You know, if you applied yourself a little more at that bank, you could afford dry cleaning. It's just about having a little pride in your appearance. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. Then there was Kyle. Since Dad couldn't afford to buy him a new car like he'd promised for graduation, Kyle constantly needed to borrow my Honda Civic to go to his friends' houses. I came out to the driveway one morning before work to find the gas gauge sitting flat on empty. The passenger floorboard was littered with crumpled fast food wrappers, and a sticky puddle of spilled soda was drying on the center console. When I confronted him about it, he just shrugged. Chill out, it's just a Honda. Dad's getting me a truck next month anyway. Dad wasn't getting him a truck. Dad couldn't even afford the electric bill without floating it on a business credit card with a 24% interest rate. But the most infuriating part was my father. You would think someone whose financial life support was plugged directly into his daughter's checking account would show a little grace. Instead, he doubled down on his authority. On the first of every month, right after my massive deposit hit the country club, he would stand at the top of the basement stairs and demand my $800 for rent. He actually lectured me about leaving a hallway light on, telling me the power bill was too high and I needed to learn the value of $1. He was bleeding me for over $4,000 a month total, and he was treating me like a stray dog he was doing a favor by feeding. As the gala approached, the boasting went into overdrive. The invitations went out, heavy, gold-foiled cardstock. Dad spent his evenings on the patio, smoking cigars he couldn't afford, loudly confirming RSVPs on speakerphone with local politicians, real estate developers, and country club board members. Dan spent $3,000 on a custom sequined evening gown, putting it on a Neiman Marcus card that I knew was already maxed out. They were living in a delusion, and I was the one paying the admission fee. It all finally snapped on a Sunday in late October, just 4 weeks before the event. I had just made the 8th and final venue payment. $28,000 of my money was sitting in Oak Creek's bank account, locking in the grand ballroom, the open bar, and the prime rib carving stations. I was exhausted. I was drained. We were sitting at the dining room table over a dinner of roast beef, and Dad casually mentioned that the florist wanted another $1,500 for centerpieces. He looked directly at me, expecting me to pull out my checkbook again. When I quietly told him my savings were tapped out and I couldn't cover it, his face turned red. The entitlement boiled over. He completely forgot the $28,000 keeping him afloat and only saw someone refusing his order. That was the exact moment he slammed his napkin down. That was the moment he called me a freeloader who didn't contribute a single dollar. And that was the moment I finally walked out the front door. I didn't drive away angry. I sat in my Civic down the street, heater running, and looked at my banking app. The contract for the gala was in my name. The payments came from my account, which meant the refund policy applied to me too. Monday morning, 8:05 a.m. I sat at my desk at the bank, logged into my personal email, and pulled up the original PDF contract from Oak Creek Country Club. I scrolled down to the fine print. Clause 4B, cancellations made 30 days prior to the event are subject to a $500 administrative fee. The remaining balance will be refunded to the original payment method. The party was exactly 30 days away. I picked up my desk phone and called the club's events coordinator. When she answered, I told her I needed to cancel the reservation for the grand ballroom. She sounded shocked and asked if I was sure, mentioning it was a highly coveted Saturday night slot. I told her I was absolutely sure. Because Dad wanted to keep the financial liability completely off his own failing books, my name was the only one on the master file. He couldn't contest this even if he knew about it. 15 minutes later, a digital document link hit my inbox. I clicked the yellow boxes, typed my electronic signature, and hit submit. Just like that, the contract was dead. $27,500 was scheduled to route back to my checking account by the end of the week. Next, I called the independent catering company Dad had insisted on hiring for the prime rib carving stations. Canceled. Then the specialty rental vendor providing the high-top cocktail tables and string quartet. Canceled. At lunchtime, I told my manager I had a family emergency, took a half day, and drove back to the house. I backed my Civic straight up to the open garage, The house was empty. Deanne was at her afternoon Pilates class, Dad was at his office putting on a show for clients, and Kyle had actually dragged himself to a shift at a local hardware store. I didn't take any furniture. I just grabbed heavy-duty black trash bags and started stuffing them with my clothes, shoes, and bathroom supplies. I packed my electronics, my important paperwork, and the few books I owned into 3 cardboard boxes. I jammed everything into my trunk and the backseat until the suspension sagged. It took me exactly 45 minutes to erase myself from the basement. Before I walked out, I placed my brass house key directly in the center of the kitchen island. No note, no dramatic explanation, just cold metal on granite. By Wednesday afternoon, I had used a chunk of my returned funds to sign a 12-month lease on a quiet, third-floor apartment in a complex 20 minutes away. For the first time in 8 months, I went to a grocery store, bought name-brand coffee, and filled my own fridge without worrying someone would eat my food or demand I pay their electric bill. My phone started lighting up on Thursday. They weren't worried, they were annoyed. Dad texted first, running away because you can't take criticism, grow up. I expect the $800 for rent on the 1st. An hour later, Diane chimed in, your brother needed to use the car this morning and you weren't here. Very selfish behavior. We will discuss this Sunday. I didn't reply, I just blocked all 3 of their numbers. For the next 4 weeks, my life was completely silent, but I watched their delusion play out in real time online. I kept tabs on Diane's Facebook page. She was posting updates every few days, her arrogance completely unchecked. She posted a photo of her $3,000 sequin dress hanging on a velvet hanger. She complained in long paragraphs about how exhausting it was to finalize a seating chart for 50 high-net-worth individuals. Dad was even worse. He took to LinkedIn, posting corporate PR speak about how his upcoming 60th birthday was going to be a celebration of long-term partnerships, market dominance, and family loyalty. They assumed the venue was secure because they assumed my money was just an automatic faucet that never turned off. Oak Creek assumed the family was well aware of the cancellation, eventually booking a regional paper supply company's corporate retreat over Dad's date. The gala didn't just not exist anymore, it had been completely overwrit. As the final week approached, Dad and Diane were busy dry-cleaning tuxedos and scheduling salon blowouts, totally insulated by their own greed. They had 30 of the wealthiest investors and local elites ready to show up for the event of the decade, completely unaware they were walking straight off a cliff. Saturday evening arrived. The weather had turned cold, a sharp November chill setting over the city. I made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and stepped out onto my third-floor balcony. I pulled out my phone, opened my settings, and quietly unblocked my father's number. It was 7 o'clock. The invitation said doors opened at 7:15. Across town, a parade of black SUVs and luxury sedans was pulling up to the valet stand at the Oak Creek Country Club. Dad had hyped this up so much that nobody was fashionably late. His biggest investor, a commercial developer who held the keys to Dad's remaining real estate deals, arrived in a tailored tuxedo. Diane stepped out of their leased Mercedes in her $3,000 sequin gown, flashing a heavily practiced smile at the arriving crowd. They walked through the country club's main lobby and headed toward the east wing, where the double mahogany doors of the grand ballroom awaited. But the doors were locked. Through the glass panes, the ballroom was pitch black. The regional paper supply company that had booked the room over our canceled date had finished their daytime seminar at 5 o'clock and packed up. There were no high-top cocktail tables, no string quartet, no prime rib carving stations, just an empty, dark cavern of a room smelling faintly of dry erase markers and stale coffee. At first, Dad assumed it was a mistake. He laughed it off, telling the gathered crowd of local elites and politicians that the staff was just running behind. But as 10 minutes passed, the crowd of 30 people standing in the hallway began to murmur. The wives in their evening gowns shivered in the drafty corridor. The investors checked their watches, exchanging annoyed glances. Dad's confident facade started to crack. He left Diane to manage the increasingly irritated crowd and marched back to the lobby to find the venue manager. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't need to be. The club coordinator had already explained the procedure to me. When a client causes a scene, they don't argue. They just pull the file. Dad stormed the front desk, his face red, demanding to know why the lights were off and where the catering staff was. He threatened to sue the club. He threatened to get the manager fired. The manager simply opened a manila folder, pulled out a single piece of paper, and slid it across the marble counter. It was the cancellation agreement. It showed the revoked catering contract, the voided ballroom reservation, and the zeroed-out balance. Right at the bottom, printed clearly next to the timestamp from 4 weeks ago, was my electronic signature. "Sir, this event was canceled a month ago due to non-payment and withdrawal by the account holder," the manager told him. "We have no catering on site for you. We have no staff assigned. You need to clear the hallway." Dad stood there, staring at the paper. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The money was gone. The room was gone. And standing 20 feet away in the hallway, watching him panic, were the exact investors he needed to keep his business afloat. They weren't looking at a powerful real estate broker anymore. They were looking at a man who couldn't even pay the deposit for his own birthday party. My phone buzzed on the patio table. The caller ID flashed Dad's name. I let it ring 3 times. Then I picked it up and hit accept. I didn't even get to say hello before the screaming started. "Where is the hall?" he roared, his voice echoing off the concrete walls of my balcony. "Where is the food? What did you do to my account, you ungrateful brat? My investors are standing right here." I took a slow sip of my tea. The steam warmed my face against the November air. "You told me to stop spending my money on you, Dad," I answered softly, making sure my voice was completely level. "You said I was a freeloader who didn't contribute a single dollar to your house. I just followed your instructions to the letter." "You have to fix this," he screamed, the panic completely overriding his anger now. "Call them, tell them it's a mistake, pay the fee." "I can't," I said. "I don't live in your house anymore. Enjoy the parking lot." I hung up the phone. I didn't block him again. I just turned the phone off completely, set it on the glass table, and watched the taillights of the cars passing on the highway below. The fallout wasn't just fast, it was absolute. The commercial developer, the guy Dad was counting on to keep his brokerage afloat, didn't even wait until Monday morning. He sent an email from his smartphone while standing in the country club parking lot, officially withdrawing his capital from the West Side development project. The other investors followed suit by Tuesday. Once the illusion of wealth was broken, the panic set in, and everyone wanted their money out. Within 2 weeks, Dad's boutique brokerage collapsed. The bank froze his business accounts to cover outstanding debts. The 24% interest rates on his maxed-out credit cards swallowed whatever liquid cash he had left. I didn't hear any of this from him, of course. I heard it through the local banking grapevine, and I saw it playing out in county public records. By January, a neon orange foreclosure notice was taped to the front door of the 5-bedroom colonial. The landscaping company stopped coming, leaving the pristine front lawn to overgrow and turn yellow in the winter frost. The leased Mercedes disappeared from the driveway, quietly repossessed in the middle of the night. Diane's country club membership was revoked for non-payment. Her social media posts completely changed tone. She went from bragging about high-net-worth seating charts to desperately trying to offload her designer wardrobe. I watched her list that $3,000 sequined evening gown on Facebook Marketplace for $400, claiming she just didn't have the closet space for it anymore. Even Kyle had to face reality. Without my car to borrow, and with the house going back to the bank, his midday video game marathons came to an abrupt end. A former coworker texted me a picture a few weeks later. It was Kyle, wearing a bright green vest, pushing a long row of shopping carts through the slush at a discount grocery store 2 towns over. As for me, the $27,000 from the country club refund sat securely in a high-yield savings account. I got a promotion at the bank in February, moving up from underwriting to a senior loan officer desk. My apartment was quiet. Nobody demanded a portion of my paycheck on the first of the month. Nobody expected me to break down their empty wine boxes or fill their gas tank. For the first time in my life, my money was entirely my own. Dad finally tried to call me one last time in late March. He left a voicemail. He didn't yell this time. He just sounded small, asking if I could loan him a few $1,000s to help with moving expenses since they had 30 days to vacate the house. I listened to it once. Then I deleted the voicemail, tapped his contact name, and permanently blocked the number. He told me to stop freeloading and buy my own food. I was just making sure I never burdened him again. Would you have warned him before the gala, or would you have let him crash exactly the way he did? If stories like this one are your kind of thing, don't forget to subscribe. This is Casterly Payback. We make daily story video for you.